Part 4. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 31. Chapter 31, Being intercepted and killed on the way. Why do you have to copy it by hand? Isn't it good to print it? Besides, even if you copy it, you still have to pay someone to copy it for you, Zhang Shiwei said dissatisfied, pouted, turned around and took his arm, and said coquettishly, I've been really tired recently, and my mental state isn't very good. You know Suyun keeps grabbing onto me recently. I'm under a lot of pressure. Her voice was already soft, but if she acted coquettishly and shook her like this, Luo Yuanhang's heart instantly softened. He put his arm around her shoulders, hugged her into his arms, and comforted her softly, you are also in this business. You don't know that most of the notes are written by hand. Think about it when you do experiments. Do you need to use a computer to record the data? Even if there is a summary, it is only the final process. Let someone else copy it. Who do you think will make you feel more at ease? What's more, what will happen to the appraisal notes when it comes to court? Do you think I haven't thought about what you said? Do you think I really don't feel sorry for you? You idiot. We can't lose in this matter. If we lose, Wulan will be doomed. So, I can only work hard for you. Speaking, he lowered his head and pressed a kiss on Zhang Shiwei's forehead. Even so, it still couldn't calm Zhang Shiwei's anger. She said angrily, after all, it's all Su Yun's fault. If she hadn't plotted against us and tricked us, we would have gotten the award by now, and the company's financing and sponsorship wouldn't be a problem. Everything would be fine. We should go to the next level. It's all her, it's all her. As she spoke, she threw away the notes on the table, as if they were all Su Yun, so that she could vent her anger. Although Luo Yuanhang also felt that what she said was right and was equally angry, the top priority was to lay the groundwork and finalize the facts before Su Yun did. When the time came, it would be useless for her to bring Huanya here to help. After coaxing her for a while, Zhang Shiwei finally went to copy those notes even though she was reluctant. Seeing that her mood was stable, Luo Yuanhang took out his mobile phone and walked aside, dialing a number and saying, have everything been arranged? Okay, I've read the manuscript and it's fine. Send it. Send it right away. Send it right away. I continued to say a few more words and then hung up the phone. Standing in front of the transparent floor-to-ceiling glass windows, Luo Yuanhang narrowed his eyes slightly and looked down at the city. This is the 36th floor. He originally chose this floor to rent because he thought the number was auspicious. 66 and 36, 66, was a great success. It was destined that his life would be smooth sailing. He had always thought so a few days ago. Although it was a bit difficult at the beginning of starting a business, it was easily overcome. Su Yun's works came out one after another, each one became more popular than the last, and the company's sales were also booming. Originally, he planned to attract sponsorship after winning this award, then expand the scale of production, and then double his assets several times. It would be best to rent the entire building, and then, list it on the market, then buy it, and then, going international. His dream was beautiful and his ambition was broad, but he didn't expect that he would be intercepted halfway. Su Yun didn't know what evil she had possessed. She had always been obedient and obedient. She listened to everything he said. She didn't even ask for a salary, but she could do whatever he did. Recently, she suddenly seemed like a different person. So what if she knew what happened between him and Weiwei? She could ask him, or she could cry and let him make a choice. He could continue to support her for the rest of her life. As a successful man, what does it mean to have 3 or 4 women? From ancient times to the present, whoever is rich and powerful doesn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines. He only has 2. What on earth is she doing? The breath he exhaled fogged up the glass windows, making it almost impossible to see the city clearly. Luo Yuanhang suddenly raised his hand and wiped away the mist on it. He was already standing so high and there was no way he could fall down again. He will not, nor is he willing, let alone go back to the days of the past. No, never. Suyun expected that she would hit the wall, but she didn't expect that she would be blocked out without even touching the wall. Zhao Xian's office door was closed, and the assistant refused to let her in. She said she was in a meeting and she had not officially joined the office yet, so she could not go in. After waiting outside for more than half an hour, but with no intention of ending, Suyun directly opened the door and barged in. The assistant didn't expect that she would force her way in. He didn't have time to stop her and chased after her. "Manager Zhao, she. Who asked you to come in?" Zhao Xian raised his eyelids and said unceremoniously, "There is a meeting here, there are no other people waiting, so get out. I have completed the entry procedures for the new students. Now I am reporting to the project department. I am a member of the project department, not just an idle person," Suyun said, sitting on an empty chair nearby. "Sat down. So what?" Zhao Xian looked at her with stern eyes. "You have gone through the onboarding process in the freshman class, but I haven't passed it yet. I don't approve it, and you are not a member of our project department." The air was filled with a strong smell of gunpowder, and the other people didn't speak and just kept their heads down. They have also heard a little bit about Suyun, and they also know that her immediate boss is very dissatisfied with her, but the big boss insists on letting her in, which is very interesting. A person who is so controversial and troubled, but has no talent or qualifications. Why would the boss prefer to be with his right-hand man over this person? After thinking about it, the only possibility is the rule that everyone knows. It's hard to say whether Suyun has any talent or hard work, but she probably has a certain way of coaxing men, and she can actually make the big boss obey her. Then how can Manager Zhao approve it? "I am willing to accept any test." Spreading her hands, she said calmly. Just like Li Chongshan said, Zhao Xian has a bad temper and a straightforward temper, but he has abilities and is not a bad person. Since we are going to work together in the future, we must open up the knot early, otherwise, if we don't talk about it, we will never be together. It is not dealt with. In fact, from Suyun's point of view, there is nothing wrong with Zhao Xian being like this. At least he can be straightforward and speak out directly if he is unhappy. He will not smile on the surface and stab you in the back. Compared with the dirty behavior of Luo Yuanhang and Zhang Shiwei, they are not as good as superficial bad guys like Zhao Xian. "Ho," Zhao Xian sneered and looked at her with disdain. Obviously, she didn't believe in Suyun's ability at all. It's easy to talk up and down. Are you willing to accept any test? Have you really thought about it clearly? There was finally a smile on her face, but it was a sarcastic smile. Suyun nodded without hesitation. "I won't regret what I said. As long as I pass the test, will Manager Zhao be willing to work with me and let me join the project department?" "Yes, but if you can't do it, you must leave the freshman class immediately. Take the initiative to resign from Mr. Wang." Zhao Xian's requirements were harsh enough, and the entire audience was silent. However, Suyun didn't hesitate at all. Deal. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 32. Chapter 32. Unless someone leaks the question to you. Seeing her agreeing so happily, Zhao Xian raised the corners of her lips and didn't even bother to hide the contempt in her eyes. "You know, although Xinchen has not been established for a long time, it is backed by the big tree of Huanya, so it recruits not only elites, but also talents. Because of this, she particularly looks down on Suyun. Originally, she was worried about how she could refuse this person to join her team and kick her out of the company, but she didn't expect that the opportunity would come to her on her own initiative. "You are happy to promise now," but don't go back on your word. I hate people who go back on their word the most. Afraid that she would change her story then, Zhao Xian added again, blocking her way out. Su Yun nodded, don't worry, I'm just like you on this point, and I hate people who go back on their word. Zhao Xian raised his eyebrows, still sitting on the chair, but turned slightly, then tapped the table with his fingertips and said, come over here. Standing up, Su Yun walked directly towards her position. In fact, as early as when she entered the door, she saw 3 bottles of perfume in front of Zhao Xian. The bottles were exactly the same, and the milliliters and grams seemed to be the same. After all, she was also in this industry, so she could guess at a glance. They are doing new product appreciation. The development of every new product requires repeated experiments, repeated measurement of stability and identification of flaws, which requires the sensitive nose of the perfumer to distinguish. Standing in front of Zhao Xian, Su Yun did not speak, waiting for her to speak first. These 3 models are products that our company has eliminated. Come and see why they were eliminated. Zhao Xian gestured with his chin, while the other people sitting around the conference table looked at each other, surprised for a moment, and soon understood the boss's intention, and everyone fell silent. Su Yun glanced at her, her eyes wanting to say, that's it? But Zhao Xian didn't respond at all, as if he was watching a good show. I picked up one of the bottles calmly and took a look at the liquid inside, then the next one. I didn't rush to smell it first, but looked at each one. She was not in a hurry, and everyone else looked at her curiously. To be precise, they were waiting for her to be embarrassed. Because the company he works for is involved, and the recent news has been constant, everyone in the company has heard more or less about Su Yun, and generally feel that this is someone who stole their company's secrets and then wanted to. People who switched jobs to Xinjiang did not have a good impression of her. Su Yun can feel the hostility, but these are not important. If she doubted herself before, she is more confident now. After reading them one by one, she put the bottle in its place, then withdrew her hand, stood up straight and looked at Zhao Xian with an indifferent expression. Zhao Xian took a sip of tea and was still waiting for her next move. She was not in a hurry. She had enough patience to wait for this woman to slowly toss and then give up in the end. But I didn't expect it, but I didn't wait for her next action. She didn't even open the cork. What does this mean? Giving up so quickly? Why are you giving up so quickly? Zhao Xian smiled mockingly and said, forget it, I won't embarrass you, since you can't. Manager Zhao is joking. Su Yun suddenly spoke. Zhao Xian was stunned by Su Yun's words and stopped immediately. How can this be a product that our company has eliminated? This is obviously a new product of the company. It should have been developed for less than half a month, and it is just the time when it is hot, she said unhurriedly. Zhao Xian didn't say anything. The others looked at each other in surprise, silently asking who had leaked the secret to her. Looking at Zhao Xian's relatively calm face, Su Yun continued, these 3 models should actually be the same, but there is a different spice in each bottle, so there is a slight difference. Of course, because of this difference, it can be said that they are not 1, but 3 different models. Really, she chuckled lightly, as if laughing at her self-righteousness. The laughter seemed to tell her that she was wrong. But Su Yun did not doubt herself, nor was she confused. Her eyes were extremely firm as she continued, that's right. Although these 3 models only differ in 1 spice, laymen may not smell much difference, but people who commonly use perfumes, you can tell it. And even if you can't tell it at the time, the underlying flavor will slowly emerge. But if I had to choose, I personally think. Hand out, he picked up a bottle from the far right, this one is better. The consumer group is more suitable for young women between the ages of 18 and 23. Hush. No one spoke, no one said she was right, and no one said she was wrong. Zhao Xian still looked at her with a half smile, and his voice was a bit teasing. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," she nodded affirmatively without hesitation. Zhao Xian pursed her lips, and said no more, but her eyebrows were no longer as contemptuous as before, and her eyes darkened, and gradually seemed to be thoughtful. "I know Mr. Zhao wants to test me. If you feel dissatisfied, I can tell you all the spices used in it." As she spoke, she really started to name the spices. If there were still people who were dubious and doubtful about her just now, at least most of them are convinced now. This is not just as simple as being authentic, but with so many people sitting here just now, there are still many people who can't tell the difference. Unexpectedly, this inconspicuous, trouble-ridden person, there was also Su Yun, who was involved in a lawsuit, and they were immediately separated. Moreover, even when manager Zhao deliberately made things difficult, he was not confused and made a calm judgment. Some people have quietly given her a thumbs up, and their favorability towards her has also increased rapidly. Even so, Su Yun didn't show a trace of joy. From the moment she accepted the challenge to the moment she passed it easily, there wasn't much change in her emotions. This question is really very simple for her. She feels that Zhao Xian should not stop like this and let her pass smoothly. "That's right." "Sure enough," Zhao Xian spoke, "what you said is correct. The spice formula here is also very precise. It seems that you are not as ignorant as the rumors say, but you are still a bit real." But at this point, there was a twist. She touched the bottle on the side and looked at Su Yun with a sharp look. "You didn't even open the cork just now, how could you know such details? Unless someone leaks the question to you." This is because she is suspected of cheating. Su Yun finally laughed and said, "Manager Zhao, this is an interesting joke. You came up with the question, and the bet was made by us on the spur of the moment. Who could have predicted it beforehand and revealed the question to me?" She looked around, and the others also felt that what she said made sense. Zhao Xian looked at her meaningfully, then, "Okay. End of this chapter." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 33. Chapter 33, I lose if I give in. This is the first level, even if you pass it? In fact, it was expected, but Su Yun still asked, "The first level?" Zhao Xian laughed out loud, "Don't you think that even if you pass such a simple question, you are qualified to join my team and can successfully join the new students? Then you may not think that our company is too simple. Point. Who can enter the freshman class without going through all the stages of written examination, interview, and oral examination? Why are you the exception?" Zhao Xian questioned her unceremoniously in front of everyone. Of course, this is something she is very unhappy about. After all, even she herself, when she entered the freshman year, had obtained substantial qualifications and award certificates. Even so, she still went through rigorous assessment. As a freshman, she can be considered as a veteran. She is confident in her abilities and believes that she can show her talents in this company. After all, she has never seen any nepotism used by the above for so long, but this time, it really makes her feel uncomfortable. She was shocked. Zhao Xian couldn't figure out where Su Yun came from, or in other words, she didn't want to know. To her, it has nothing to do with Su Yun's background or background connections. She just doesn't want someone without real knowledge to join her team and work with her. "I never thought about making an exception, and I don't think I am an exception. After all, aren't you assessing me?" Su Yun's voice was very calm, and there was a light smile on her face. She was decent and generous, and she was not making things difficult at all. Embarrassment and anger. She is too quiet, which makes her stand out, and her calm temperament is very comfortable. Yes, I am testing you. Your answer just now is correct, but this is just the first level. It does not mean that you have passed if you are here with me. The reason why Zhao Xian refused to let go was that it would be too easy for her to simply let her go. The question just now was asked casually, and it was somewhat difficult, but not too much. I originally thought that she was just a little thief who was good at opportunism and had no ability, but I didn't expect that she solved the problem in front of her colleagues. It seems that this time we have to take it seriously and find something more difficult. Mr. Zhao, feel free to ask the question, but if you give in, I will lose. Suyun was not timid, she just paused, leaned forward slightly, looked into Zhao Xian's eyes, and suddenly laughed. Her smile was obviously not offensive, but it suddenly made Zhao Xian feel guilty. What are you going to do? Nothing, I just want to ask Manager Zhao, how many levels have you prepared for me in total? Zhao Xian took a deep breath and straightened her back. What? Are you scared? Weren't you just talking loudly? It's not that I'm afraid, but since it's a bet, it's better to make it clear at the beginning. I don't mind any reasonable assessment under any legitimate form, but if no matter how many tests I pass, Manager Zhao will always have another chance. The first level is waiting for me, then. Zhao Xian opened his eyes wide, and his anger was ready to burst out. Who do you think I am? What do you mean there is always the next level waiting for you? Suyun, Zhao Xian called her by her first and last name, and said loudly, yes, I don't like you very much, but I always do things in a business-like manner. Do you think I am deliberately making things difficult for you? Suyun laughed, I don't think so. Manager Zhao is generous, so, how many levels are there in total? The fingers of the hand hanging by his side slowly curled up and squeezed tightly, trying his best to restrain himself and still maintain the surface tranquility. Zhao Xian was furious. This Suyun looks gentle and harmless on the surface, but there is something hidden inside, approaching her with every word. He did mean to make things difficult, but after she said this, it became harder to do so. 3 levels, Zhao Xian gritted his teeth and said decisively, without specialization, everyone who enters the project department has passed the 3 levels of challenge, so you are no exception. Standing up, Suyun nodded, okay. Everyone can bear it, and of course I should bear it too. I don't know what this second level is, or, the one just now was just a drill, and the next one is the first one. It seemed like a very serious inquiry, but it dug a hole for Zhao Xian lightly. Zhao Xian was very face-conscious in front of so many people. He had originally planned to say this, but he didn't expect that Suyun had beaten him to it, making it difficult for him to say it. He could only say angrily, since I just said that I passed the first level, there is no such thing as a drill. What do you think our company is? Treat it as my company too, Suyun answered naturally. Zhao Xian. Okay, don't say such flattery in front of me. I won't do it. Don't forget, even if you pass the first level today, there are still 2 levels left. These 2 levels, well, it gets harder every time, and I hope you won't cry even if you lose. Don't worry, I am just like you, I will do what I say. The emphasis on the last 4 words was deliberately emphasized. Zhao Xian's face was not very good anyway. Okay, that's it for today's meeting. Let's break up. When the word dismissed came out, the people who are used to eating who had been waiting for a long time took the things they had packed in front of them, got up and left the office one after another. Suyun knew that their affairs were not over yet, so she still stood there waiting. Sure enough, after everyone went out and the door was closed, Zhao Xian stood up, stretched out his arms and stretched his body, and said, you are lucky in the first level today, but not so much in the next 2 levels. It's easy. You have to know that it's not easy to fool around here. You mean, these 2 levels are not being tested yet? Hearing the meaning of her words, Soo-yoon didn't seem to intend to solve everything today. If this is the case, it would be a waste of time to drag it out. Regardless of her relationship with Wei Lan, she still loves her career very much. Even though there are a lot of trivial matters and more troubles recently, she has never stopped loving fragrance. Of course not, Zhao Xian said confidently, do you think I have nothing to do and have a lot of free time just to accompany you? Besides, since we have to be cautious, we must determine the content of the assessment before we can arrange it. Then, when? If it is delayed indefinitely, will it not mean the same thing in the end? Zhao Xian turned her head and looked straight at her. Why, are you afraid that I will delay it indefinitely? Frankly speaking, yes, Soo-yoon answered straightforwardly. Zhao Xian was a little surprised at her lack of concealment, but soon she smiled. Okay. I'm happy if you confess. Don't worry, although I want to embarrass you, I still disdain such rogue methods. Within 3 days, I will decide the content of the assessment and will inform you. Soo-yoon was very satisfied. What is my job in these 3 days? End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 34. Chapter 34. Is it time for you to end it? Work. Zhao Xian shook his head. If you haven't passed my assessment, you are not considered a member of my team, and I will not arrange any work for you. After a pause, she added, of course, if you have to do something, just do some odd jobs. If you do not mind. I mind, Soo-yoon said bluntly. I am a perfumer. I know my identity, what I should do and what I shouldn't do. Doing a job is not despicable, but it is not what I should do. Since Manager Zhao needs 3 days to decide on the assessment content, and there is no work arrangement for me yet, I will wait for your news. She smiled slightly. Oh, by the way, if Manager Zhao, if you still haven't thought of the appropriate content for my assessment, I will take it as saying that you have passed my assessment and I can officially join the job. Zhao Xian never expected that she was completely out of luck. I thought that if her arrogance was suppressed, she would be willing to show her positive attitude, even if she wanted to work as a handyman first, but she didn't expect that she would refuse at the first glance, so simply. Yes, as a perfumer, both hands and nose are very important and need to be protected. But she, Soo-yoon, is asking for help from her now, and she has no intention of giving in. Zhao Xian was a little angry, but he couldn't help but look at her differently. When Soo-yoon left the company, she attracted a lot of attention. People outside didn't know what the discussion was between her and Zhao Xian, so when they saw her coming out and leaving the company, they thought that the negotiation had broken down or that she had been fired. For a while, the gossip started flying wildly. Of course, Soo-yoon doesn't care about these. She wants to use these 3 days to completely resolve the mess over Luo Yuanhang. However, as soon as I got in the car, I received a call from an unknown number. Hello, is this Soo-yoon, Miss Soo? The other party's voice was unfamiliar and polite. Soo-yoon was stunned for a moment and nodded. It's me, you. Hello, I am the lawyer representing Wulan. I have been entrusted by Mr. Luo Yuanhang to handle the case regarding your theft of confidential information from Wulan Company. I believe you have received the lawyer's letter sent before, right? Although the other party was still very polite, it could be heard that every word was an attack. Soo-yoon was stunned for 2 seconds, then laughed out loud. Stealing. Ha! Luo Yuanhang has already used this word directly. He said it more tactfully before, but now he is just hammering nails into the chopping board of thief. Ms. Soo, as Wulan's lawyer, I would like to remind you that the current evidence is very unfavorable to you and you have no chance of winning. Based on humanitarian principles, we would like to ask you, do you want it to be private or public? What happens when it's private, what happens when it's public? She asked casually as she slowly took out a bottle of water from the side, opened it and took a sip. Private, I just need you to issue an apology statement. We will prepare it for you. You just need to sign it. In addition, you must publicly apologize to Mr. Luo and Miss Zhang for 1 week in a row, and within 3 years, you must not. If I join another company in the same industry, we will have to go to court. Boom, there was a crisp sound as her lips left the mouth of the bottle. Su-Yun screwed the cap on, neatly, it's done. I probably didn't expect that she chose the impossible choice without even hesitating. She was stunned for a moment, and then immediately added, Miss Su, I think you may not have heard clearly, or you may not understand the procedure well. The consequences in the future. If you lose the lawsuit, it is not just an apology. We can make additional compensation. I advise you to think carefully about the amount of compensation you will have to pay and the possible jail time. Mr. Luo Bian is just asking for an apology. Tell Luo Yuanhang, stop daydreaming, you will easily become stupid. Interrupting the lawyer, she said, you also said if you lose the case, but in my case, there is no such if. See you in court. After saying that, she hung up the phone. How ridiculous. Is Luo Yuanhang so confident? Do you think he can put her firmly in the dust based on those information and so-called witnesses? The reason why she stayed peacefully in the dust for so many years was because she was willing to look up to him and become his stepping stone so that he could climb higher. But I'm sorry, now that she has stood up, she will never humble herself like this again. Driving directly back home, I didn't expect Si Yao to be at home. I thought he should be at the company at this moment. He had obviously just come back not long ago. He only took off his coat, but still wore the shirt underneath. He tore off his tie and threw it aside. One button was undone, revealing his Adam's apple. He was leaning on the sofa, twisting his eyebrows. Tablet in hand. Why are you back so early today? Su-Yun was changing her shoes at the entrance. She lowered her head and took out her slippers and put them on. You haven't eaten yet. It's just in time. I'll do it. She planned to go straight to the kitchen, but Si Yao stretched out his hand to stop her. Don't go yet, come here. Su-Yun, who had already rolled up her sleeves, turned to look at him and saw that his brows were furrowed and he seemed unhappy, so she turned back and said, What's wrong? The company encountered a problem. What's the problem for me? He raised his eyes and glanced at her, expressing dissatisfaction with her question. Since he took over Asia Pacific, he has encountered problems, big and small, but to him, they are not a problem, and those that can be solved are not problems. He has enough capital and confidence to be proud. Su-Yun pursed her lips and smiled softly. Su-Yun sat down next to him, put her arms around his neck, and said coquettishly, Yes, my boss is the most capable. Nothing can trouble you. Her smile was like a flower, and she was so close. Si Yao's dark eyes darkened suddenly, and he came closer, almost touching her lips. Really? How, capable? Su-Yun's face immediately turned red as she breathed so close to her. He wanted to push him away. How do I know? You don't know and you still say I'm capable. Do you want me to prove it? How can it be so easy to push away the warm and fragrant nephrite that comes to your door? Si Yao grabbed her waist and held her tightly in his arms. Is it time for you to end it? The hint was so obvious that Su-Yun wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl in. It was broad daylight, and she didn't know where to look. No, not yet. His tongue is tied. Especially when I heard his very slight sigh, my face became even hotter. What were you looking at just now? Some boring stuff, he said lazily, and he was about to push the tablet over. Su-Yun had already seen the words on the screen with sharp eyes. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 35. Chapter 35. Do you believe it? Weibo was open on the tablet screen, and it looked like some tidbits of news. Soo-yoon saw at a glance that the blogger was a big V who often broke news, and immediately turned to laugh at him. I didn't expect that President Si-do would read such gossip. Si-yo stared at her but said nothing. With this look in her eyes, Soo-yoon felt something was wrong. She looked at the screen again and took a closer look at the content of the news. It turned out to be about her. It was named and surnamed without any innuendo, and the main content was about her time in college. To be precise, from the time when she was in college until she later entered the society. The most detailed one is about her relationship with Luo Yunhang and Zhang Shiwei. The title is very sensational, The Happy Time When a Green Tea Jumped Up and Down. Soo-yoon was stunned. Rather than being angry, she was more surprised. She really didn't expect Luo Yunhang to be so cruel. I thought that he had already used it to the full extent of slandering her. Seizing information and going to court were his last resort. But he didn't expect that he would have such a trick, and even deny their previous feelings. Oh, sorry. Maybe there really isn't any emotion between them, otherwise why would they do this? After looking at it for a while, Soo-yoon turned to look at the man behind her. Do you believe it? It doesn't matter what other people say or slander, what matters is what they think. Si-yo still had the same expression on his face. When he heard her question, he just blinked. What? As I said, it's boring stuff. This time he turned off the tablet, then took her into his arms, looked down at her face, and pinched her nose with one hand. Are you angry? Soo-yoon shook her head. He then opened his hands and hugged his neck, resting his head on his shoulder, absorbing the sense of security that came from him. Yes, why would she ask such a stupid question? If he believed in those things, how could he be so calm and call them boring things? He trusted her so much, even though such unconditional trust could not even affect her. They all find it baffling, but it's really reassuring. The longer she spent with him, the more she understood what a truly good man in this world should be like, and the more she reflected on what kind of she had been in the past, and how she was so devoted to people like Luo Yunhang. You said it was boring stuff, why should I get angry about boring stuff? She leaned on his shoulder and said dully. Now it's right. Si-yo stroked her long hair with one hand, curling it and rubbing it in his hand. It felt really good and he couldn't put it down. You skipped work on the first day of employment. Are you unhappy at work? He asked casually, as if making small talk. Is there anyone in the company who is making things difficult for you? No, the leader is very considerate. He gave me 3 days off to deal with my personal matters, and also gave me time to adapt to the new environment as soon as possible. It's not too considerate. She clapped her hands and applauded the new leader. Really, looking at her sideways, Si-yo expressed doubts about her words. Such a considerate leader seems to need to find time to take good care of her. He looked very serious, not joking at all. Soo-yoon waved her hands repeatedly. No need, Xinchen is just an insignificant subsidiary of Huanya, and our leader is just my immediate boss. There is a huge gap between me and a high-ranking CEO like you. You don't frighten people anymore with this sudden reception. Tisk, Si-yo made her laugh out loud, and pinched her chin. That's a good job flattering me, let's consider rewarding her. What's the reward? She asked with interest. What do you want? He asked close to her, almost against her ear. This moment opened all the pores on Soo-yoon's body, and she jumped up like a spring. I want to think about this. Let's eat first, I'm hungry. Seeing her running into the kitchen as if she was running away, Si-yo didn't say anything to stop her. He looked away with a smile, and his eyes fell on the tablet again, the waves in his eyes dark and turbulent. Although it is just some nonsense, the woman who dares to slander him in this way will definitely make these people pay the corresponding price. In the kitchen, Soo-yoon washed her hands and rummaged through the refrigerator. She thought there were only simple things like instant noodles or eggs, but she didn't expect that there were everything from meat to fresh vegetables, which surprised her. I thought that a person like Sci-Yao would definitely have a clean slate, and he didn't like having servants at home every day, and the part-time workers only came to clean up every 2 days. How could he have so many things at home? After flipping through it, she decided to cook first and ask him later. Recently, she has been busy with her first love affairs, and the food was hardly delicious. Later, Sci-Yao took her out for 2 big meals, but she still missed the home-cooked dishes. There are ready-packed ribs in the refrigerator, which makes it easier. I just put them in the pot and stew them, then I beat the eggs, stirred them, and cut some garnishes. Outside, Sci-Yao had been sitting for a while, taking care of some things. He got up and walked in before he saw his little woman come out of the kitchen. When he came in, Suyun was cooking with a spatula in her hand. She could already smell a tangy aroma from the door, which was so strong that it made people want to start eating directly. He simply stopped at the door of the kitchen, leaning against the doorframe, watching the little woman busy there in silence. She is thin and wears a large household apron. The belt on her waist is so tight that it looks even thinner. The way she turns her head to look at the soup while busy cooking is really beautiful. Only, after watching for a while, Sci-Yao didn't know what he saw. He frowned. He stood up and walked over. He took the spatula directly from her hand and said, "I'll do it." Ah, Suyun was so focused that she didn't notice when he came in. Suyun was startled. Fortunately, he reacted quickly enough. He blocked her waist with one hand to prevent her from falling, and held the spatula steadily with the other hand. In the next second, she had already taken over the cooking task. "You, just come and I'll do it." Suyun was stunned for a moment and wanted to pick it up again, but he cleverly avoided it. While stir-frying the vegetables in the pot, he pushed her out and said, "You go out first, it will be ready soon." She didn't understand what he meant. Suyun stood aside for a while and saw that he was cooking in a decent manner, and he didn't mean to show off at all. "Go," Sci-Yao urged when he saw that she was still standing at the edge. Others have already taken their place, so Suyun can only take a back seat. Then, "Okay. You've already put the salt in the soup, don't put it anymore." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 36. Chapter 36. I'm a little flattered. After washing her hands and returning to the living room, Suyun sat down on the sofa and took a sip of water. She glanced at the tablet placed aside. After thinking about it, she picked it up and opened it gently with her fingers. Opening the Weibo interface, she lowered her head, put her knuckles against her lips, and looked carefully at the things that broke the news. Because of Sci-Yao's relationship, she didn't read it in detail. She just roughly knew that it was about something that happened when the three of them were in college. To describe it as taking it out of context and confusing right and wrong couldn't be more appropriate. But what makes her find it interesting is that the revelations did not come from the mouths of the two parties involved, Luo Yuanhang or Zhang Shiwei, but from the identities of third-party bystanders, all of whom were their college classmates. Or so-called mutual friends. If she was still a little angry at first, looking at it, she couldn't get angry anymore, and she just felt it was ridiculous. Those names just looked familiar to her, and some of their faces were not even recognizable to her. With a temperament like hers, she is not solitary but not gregarious either. She spends most of her time on a lot of experiments and collecting data when going out. She has no time to do some meaningless socializing on campus, but now the people who jumped out to testify seem to know her very well. They vividly described how Zhang Shiwei and Luo Yuanhang were a perfect match when they were in college, how they were a perfect match, and how she interfered in other people's feelings. Third party. In their description, she was the mistress, and because of the kindness of those two people, they could not bear to hurt her, so they still regarded her as a friend, and took her by their side regardless of their past grudges when she was in the most difficult and depressed times. But I didn't expect that in the past few years, instead of being grateful, I had stolen the company's data and Zhang Shiwei's hard work and bit back. This is simply a real-life version of the story of Mr. Dongguo and the wolf. She watched with great concentration. From being a little angry at first, she gradually calmed down. She almost stayed away from the incident and regarded herself as an outsider watching others make up stories. Originally, she was not like this, so what was said above was not her doing. Time to eat. The aroma of the food could be heard. Sci-Yao brought the soup and put it on the dining table. He called her and turned to the kitchen to serve the food again. She wanted to help, but was stopped by his look. Go and sit down at the dining table, and don't move anything else. Su-Yun had no choice but to sit down obediently and watched as he arranged everything like a virtuous house cook, and even served her rice considerately and placed it in front of her. Looking at his busy figure, Su-Yun thought that if any reporter or Huanya employee saw the scene now, their jaw would drop. Who would have thought that the all-powerful CEO Sci-Do would actually have a caring side, and it was so natural, without any sense of violation. At this moment, he seemed to be more approachable. Eat, what do you want me to do? Sci-Yao glanced at her and handed the chopsticks to her hand. After thinking for a moment, he stood up and poured some soup in front of her before sitting down. I'm a little flattered. Su-Yun held her chin in one hand and looked at him and said. Is this called pampering? Sci-Yao glanced at her. Then I think you need to exercise your heart. You will be surprised a lot in the future. Su-Yun felt sweet in her heart, she just felt that this man was so good at sultry. The dishes in front of him looked delicious. In addition to the tube-bone lotus root soup that she had stewed earlier, as well as the fried tomatoes and scrambled eggs, he also added a steamed pork vermicelli and cold crispy bamboo shoots and enoki mushrooms. Sci-Yao put vegetables into her bowl and said, you are too thin. You need to eat more. I didn't expect you could cook. The taste is really good, the color, aroma are all round. Not only is it comparable to the skill of a chef, it is definitely the best among home-cooked dishes. Stopping his chopsticks, Sci-Yao looked at her. Do you think I should sit at the dining table, like a toddler who can't take care of myself, waiting for the servant to do everything, even feed me and wipe the mess? Rice grains. Su-Yun. I can't help but laugh when I think of that scene. However, although the description is a bit outrageous, it is actually about the same. At least, you shouldn't have to cook by yourself. She suddenly became curious about his life, which seemed to be different from what she imagined. Of course you don't have to do it if you want. He did not deny that with his background and status, he certainly did not need to do these trivial little things himself. Then you don't want to? Su-Yun was even more curious. Does he have a hobby of cooking? Otherwise, he had to kick her out of the kitchen just now and take charge of it himself? Sci-Yao glanced at her lightly and shook his head. I studied abroad for a while. So, he was halfway through speaking, and Su-Yun didn't understand what he meant. Even if you study abroad, given the economic conditions of the Si family, it is a simple matter to have a house and servants to take care of you. Ah, by the way, he doesn't like having servants at home, so is that why he does it himself? Sci-Yao took a sip of the soup and then continued to answer her question. As the heir of Huanya and the Si family, it is not just about business management, but also needs training in other aspects. During that time, I learned cooking is a way to relieve stress. He didn't say much more on this topic. He didn't tell her that he couldn't be with her during that time and what he had experienced during that time. So, you didn't let me continue doing it just now, because you don't trust my craftsmanship. Soo-yoon took a sip of the soup and thought it tasted pretty good. Even if he was a skilled cook, there was no need to question her skills like this. There is too much fume in the kitchen. After a pause, he added, you should never cook again. It turns out to be this reason. Soo-yoon was very surprised. There is too much oil smoke? You must know that he has the most high-end kitchen utensils here, and even the smoke exhaust equipment is professional grade. She didn't even notice it just now, especially compared with the kitchen of the house she rented before. It was like heaven and earth. I remembered what Luo Yuanhang often said in the past, women should be able to go to the hall and the kitchen, just like my Yunur. At that time, she was quite proud, feeling that she had eaten him to death and that he was very dependent on her, but she never thought that he had never cut vegetables or washed dishes. He was always waiting to eat ready-made food. And now, Sci-Yao kicked her out of the kitchen and refused to let her get her hands on it, just because there was too much smoke. It turns out that when a man loves you, he doesn't need you to go to the living room or the kitchen at all. He will only hold you in the palm of his hand and take good care of you. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 37. Chapter 37. You are the only one in the world who is qualified. After eating, Soo-yoon just wanted to get up and clean it up, but he snatched it away again. I told you that you don't need to move. He frowned slightly, with a look of disapproval on his face. From now on, the kitchen is your forbidden area, you are not allowed to go there. Soo-yoon was a little helpless. I used to cook by myself. It's the past, but it's not allowed in the future. He neatly put away the dishes and went into the kitchen. Soon, I heard the sound of rushing water coming from inside. Soo-yoon walked over and leaned against the door frame of the kitchen and looked at him. Her cuffs were rolled up, revealing her lean arms. His skin was particularly white, but not unhealthy. He looked strong and strong. Thinking of these arms that had tightly wrapped around her waist, her body began to tremble unconsciously. Are you going to respond? While washing the dishes, he suddenly spoke. Soo-yoon was stunned for a moment and didn't respond. Ah. What? About those boring things. He turned to look at her and said lightly. After pondering for a moment, Soo-yoon nodded, of course. Although it is very nonsense, it has affected her reputation after all. What's more, she is not just a person now. Even for the future, she will never let Sci-Yao be stained unnecessarily because of her. What are you going to do? Do you want to clarify? Sci-Yao continued to ask. Soo-yoon shook her head. There's nothing to clarify about this kind of thing, it's just getting darker and darker. If I stand up and argue with them, I will play into their hands. At that time, the public will feel that she is angry and that she has been righted. Maybe a small number of people will believe her, but so what? Both time and reputation will be damaged. How will she treat herself in the new company? What do colleagues think of her? As for Luo Yuanhang and Zhang Shiwei, they only need to talk and spend some money to find someone to operate it. There is no need to confront her head-on. She can't afford to spend money on them, and she doesn't want to spend it. Then, do you need help? Having washed the dishes, he rinsed his hands, carefully wiped all the gaps, and walked towards her. No need. Seeing him opening his arms towards her, Soo-yoon took the initiative to reach out, hugged him, looked up at him and said, if I can't handle this little thing, what qualifications do I have to be your Mr. Si, wife? Sci-Yao smiled lovingly, lowered his head and kissed her forehead softly. You are the only one in the world who is qualified. Whether it was to coax her or not, she took it. It's really useful. In return, Soo-yoon stood up on tiptoes and took the initiative to give him a kiss on the lips. Originally it was just a small reward, but obviously he was not satisfied with such a simple kiss. He clasped the back of her head with one hand and took the initiative to deepen it, making the reward bigger. Wilan President Office. Luo Yuanhang, who had just finished the regular meeting, returned to the office and saw Lawyer Lugo already waiting inside. "How's it going?" he asked proudly, tugging on his tie. The smile on his face couldn't be concealed, as if he was sure of victory. Miss Su said, "See you in court. Speak concisely and concisely." Luo Yuanhang, who had already reached for the coffee on the table, was stunned for a moment, and his hand became stiff. He turned to look at him, as if he didn't hear clearly. "What did you say?" Ms. Su rejected the suggestion to go private and insisted on seeing the court. "She thinks she can win? Does she have any new evidence?" He narrowed his eyes and was very confused. Lawyer Luo shook his head. "I'm not sure about this, but from Miss Su's tone, her attitude is very firm. But judging from the evidence currently available, our company is almost guaranteed to win. So, Mr. Luo doesn't have to worry too much." "He is worried. How could he not be worried?" The reason why the lawyer is not worried is because what he sees is superficial evidence. After all, he knows best that the research and development of these products in the company over the years are inseparable from Su Yun's contribution. However, who asked her to leave? He was so decisive and left no room for change. Since he was stuck here and couldn't save face, everyone had no choice but to fight to the end. However, Su Yun knew that she had no chance of winning, so why didn't she give in? Was it because the freshman had given her some confidence, or was it because she still held some trump card? Luo Yuanhang was very confused, but he couldn't find the answer yet. "Okay, I understand. When will the court begin?" "Next week. Go ahead and make preparations. Call her a few more times and tell her that it's for the sake of the old relationship and that it can be settled in court. Don't talk too much. Do you understand?" Lawyer Luo was a little confused. "I understand, but..." "You go out." The lawyer went out with full of doubts. As soon as he left the house, Zhang Shiwei came in directly. She never knocks on the door when entering the president's office. Everyone in the company knows that Zhang Shiwei is nominally the director of the R&D department, but in fact she is the quasi-proprietress. It's just that the recent gossip news is really interesting, and everyone is secretly getting a kick out of it. Now seeing her swaying straight into the president's office, I couldn't help but gossip in a low voice. "Hey, have you read the news on the internet? It's about our president and his wife." "Who, president's wife?" "Hey, Director Zhang, do you need to clarify this?" I know, it means that there is a third party intervening between them, and they have been interfering for many years before leaving. They turned against each other and stole our company's confidential information." That one. Su Yun. "Yes, Su Yun, hey, I remember she is also from our company and sometimes comes to the headquarters. She seems to be a technician." "It's not her. She looks pretty, but I didn't expect that she is such a person behind the scenes. I saw that she was a bit ambiguous with our president before, but I didn't expect it." "What kind of ambiguity? She and the CEO are going to get married." I'm still mumbling. Isn't Director Zhang angry about such an obvious thing? "What, get married?" Everyone was shocked. Yes, I heard it once, saying that they made an appointment to get the certificate or something." "What, come on, tell me when, will there be a big reversal?" A group of people are chatting happily in the WeChat group in the office. People who eat melons have unlimited enthusiasm for gossip, especially when the protagonist is still in front of them. Zhang Shiwei entered the office and turned to look at the people who were still working outside. From time to time, someone glanced in her direction. She was a little annoyed, so she closed the blinds directly. "A bunch of rubbish. Yuan Hang, it's been a long time since you went out with others." She leaned closer and said coquettishly, "I'm almost bored to death lately." "You're still in the mood to go out and have fun, don't you know what's going on in the company and what's going on with me?" Luo Yuanhang poured himself a big sip of coffee, Did you know that Soo-yoon is determined to file a lawsuit with us? End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 38. Chapter 38. I always feel like she's holding back her ultimate move. Then let's fight, Zhang Shiwei said disapprovingly. Anyway, I have copied the information. We have enough evidence and a professional legal team. Can we still be afraid of her? Speaking of the information, she raised her hand and looked left and right. Look, my hands are swollen from copying, and it hurts me to death. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't be working so hard. We must not let her go on this voyage. Stand up and teach her a lesson. How could she treat you like this? Pushing her leaning body away, Luo Yuanhang was not in the mood, and he was not as optimistic as she was. I always feel that she is holding back her big move. She knows that all the evidence is in my hands, so why does she still insist on filing a lawsuit? Zhang Shiwei was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. No way, you are thinking too much. What big tricks can she hold back? We have the information in our hands, and the people in the company are not familiar with her at all. At that time, I told her to let her just stay in the laboratory and don't come to the company anymore, right? By the way, everyone on the internet now knows that she interfered in our relationship and stole the company's secrets because she was jealous of me. What are you afraid of? The right place and right time. And, we've got them all. That's not what I said. You should know that the company's products were all developed by her. Interrupting his words, Zhang Shiwei said unhappily, after all, you just feel like you can't live without her, right? Since you think she's so good, just go find her and I'll leave. Stomping her feet, she turned around to leave. Seeing that she was angry, Luo Yuanhang quickly grabbed her arm and pulled her into his arms. Hey, what are you talking about? Do I mean this? If I think she is good, if I liked her, would I still be like this? Who is it for? You little heartless thing. Gently kissing the side of her face, Luo Yuanhang coaxed her. Zhang Shiwei immediately turned around and turned her back. Her bright red lips came up to kiss him passionately. He let go after a long time, and she snuggled into his arms as softly as a puddle of water. Then I don't like you mentioning her. She has occupied you for so many years, and I am jealous. Can't I be jealous? Okay, I know you are jealous. But now is not the time to be jealous. Why wait, after the company's first love incident, there has been no news about new products for a while. Colleagues in the company are talking about you. The director of the department must come up with something. Zhang Shiwei hesitated, speechless for a moment. It's not that she doesn't know how to do it, it's just that Soo-yoon is here. She hasn't touched these things in many years. Although the basics are there, the matter of making perfume requires the accumulation of experience, inspiration, and ideas. Her mind is full of them. How could I be with Luo Yuanhang, hold on to this man tightly, sit in the seat of Wulan CEO's wife, and then be her rich wife with peace of mind, without even thinking about touching those things? It's all Soo-yoon's fault. If she hadn't made such a big fuss, why would he be forced into this situation now? Don't force me, she turned around and said in annoyance. Luo Yuanhang hugged her from behind. I'm not forcing you, but I am also under pressure, do you understand? If we can keep up with new products at this time, it is best to release a hit product. We will win without having to fight the lawsuit. Recently in Paris there is a new product exhibition. Haven't you been out for a long time? We will go out with this explosive product. If you can have a good time, our company will be able to reach a higher level. When the time comes, we will go and get the certificate. Go to Europe for your honeymoon, huh? It was undeniable that Luo Yuanhang's words were too tempting to her. She could almost see the blueprint of a beautiful life unfolding before her eyes. But, it's easy to say, it's not that easy to make a hit. What's more, she hasn't touched it in several years, let alone no inspiration at all. Even if she is given an inspiration now, she is not sure whether her unfamiliar techniques can achieve the desired effect. What's wrong? You don't have confidence in yourself. Don't worry, there are still people in the laboratory. Isn't that Wu Arian still there? She has been with Suyun for so many years, so she has some experience. You let them help. As he was talking, Zhang Shiwei's mind was racing rapidly, thinking about whether there was any other way. Luo Yuanhang urged again and again. Although she hadn't thought of it yet, she could only nod her head and said, "Okay, I'll try my best." "I knew you were the best," kissing her hard, Luo Yuanhang said happily. "As for Suyun, I plan to talk to her again. I want to make sure that she really has something to do with her. On hand. You are not allowed to be seduced by her," Zhang Shiwei said coquettishly, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Who else can compare to you, a little goblin?" The two were entangled with each other, regardless of the fact that they were still in the office, and they were fighting fiercely. In the coffee shop, Suyun was sitting by the window, scrolling through her cell phone, and cutting a small piece of cake with a spoon. The door was opened, Wu Arian came in quickly, looked around, quickly found her location, and walked over in a few steps. "Cappuccino and Napoleon," she ordered casually, put down her bag, put a hand on her chest, and gasped for air. "You were chased? You escaped?" Looking at her appearance, Suyun asked suspiciously. "Sister Yun, don't be so crow-mouthed." Suyun stared at her and looked so angry that she couldn't help but laugh. "Hand out her hand to pinch Arian's cheek," she said. "Has Luo Yuanhang given you any trouble recently?" That villain, Wu Arian was very angry when she mentioned this scumbag. "He asked me to be Zhang Shiwei's assistant and help her develop new products. Do you think it's ridiculous? Zhang Shiwei? That gesticulating vase? What can she do? She knows nothing." She couldn't help but swear, and she vented her emotions angrily. Suyun chuckled lightly. "Don't say that. She is also a professional, has passed the exam, and has qualifications. What's more, she has won so many awards. I bother." It was okay not to mention this, but when it came to mentioning it, Arian spat. "Did she take that? Shameless. I took away your credit, I also stole your man, and now I want to beat you up and pour dirty water on you. How can there be such a shameless woman in the world? It really me off. SHH. He put a finger on his lips to signal her to whisper, "Correct your wording, that is no longer my man." "Hey, why are you still so calm? Have you seen what was said on the internet? I was so angry that I got into a quarrel with them. They were shameless and deleted my posts and scolded me." "Suyun, did you quarrel with them?" She really hasn't seen Arian's post. It seems that Luo Yuanhang took great pains to find someone to control and comment on it. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 39. Chapter 39, when it comes to strength, she won't back down. "Sister Yun, what are you going to do?" Arian waved her hand and asked. "They are pouring dirty water on you now. I also saw some of your college classmates standing up to slander you. I don't understand. We are all classmates, even if we are not friends, we can't lie like this with open eyes." "It's not entirely a lie. After all, I wasn't close to them at that time. I'm afraid not many people know about my relationship with Luo Yuanhang," Suyun said lightly. She had to be objective about this matter. What's more, officially, it was after she graduated. After she won the first award, Luo Yuanhang confessed to her seriously, and they really came together. And later, when she had that accident, he never left her, perhaps out of emotion, perhaps out of affection, or something else. Only then did her and Luo Yuanhang's relationship quickly warm up, and then they were willing to be the two sides. The woman behind him was immersed in the laboratory day and night, and didn't care about anything else except him and the spices. At that time, she was in a daze. Coupled with the failure, she was very unsure of herself and did not think deeply about it. Now that she has calmed down and looked back, it seems that every step is a pit and a trap. Is that so? Arian frowned and bit her spoon lightly. Then, is there no one who knows about your relationship? Apart from me and the three of you, aren't there any other common friends? Su-Yun said nothing and shook her head slightly. Even if there is no need to involve other people, not to mention that this matter is getting darker and darker. Then let them throw dirty water like this and there is nothing you can do, Wu Arian defended her. This is so irritating. How frustrating it is to be slandered and not be able to clear your name. Actually, don't you think the current direction is a little off track? Su-Yun took a sip of coffee and said very calmly, the biggest problem for me, them, and Wilan right now is probably about the original creation of first love. As for the issue of ownership, the relationship between me and him is simply a private matter and does not require anyone else's judgment. Why did Luo Yuanhang expose this matter at this time? Is it just to clear Zhang Shiwei's name? Frowning and thinking seriously for a while, Arian slapped the table with one hand and said, I know. They want to divert attention so that everyone will be attracted by the gossip and not pay attention to the original copyright issue. No, Su-Yun laughed. She looked out the window. It was sunny outside and the weather was perfect. She had been immersed in the laboratory for a long time. She had not seen such good weather for a long time, or in other words, she had not paid such attention to the changes in the weather for a long time. This is a sensory chain effect on people. The reason why I am smeared like this is to give everyone a fixed impression of me. I am a mistress who gets involved in other people's feelings, and I am a person who likes to fight for other people's things, because I am jealous of Zhang Shiwei because I am inferior to her in every way, so I deliberately try to steal other people's achievements. Because of this, it is perfectly normal for me to steal the company's secrets and steal her ideas. No evidence is needed for everyone to believe it. Because, I am a mistress, right? Yan was stunned for a long time, then she choked out, how vicious. They are just some small tricks that cannot be put on the table. She looked away and said with a smile, those are irrelevant. As long as I win this lawsuit and vindicate myself, everything else will be fine. It's a matter of passing by. At first, I thought the matter was quite difficult, but after hearing what she said, it seemed very simple, but Arian still didn't know what she was going to do. But the evidence. The reason why evidence is called evidence is because it exists objectively. Luo Yuanhang thought that by taking away the notes and all the information, he took away all the evidence. In fact, the most important ones are all here, he pointed. She smiled at her head, he can't take it away. I had planned to go back directly after meeting Yan, but I didn't expect a call from Zhao Xian. She didn't have Zhao Xian's mobile phone number, so she was stunned for a while when she heard the voice, and then she realized it was her. The second and third level assessments are ready. Are you ready? Zhao Xian asked her bluntly. Su-Yun thought for a while, when? Aren't you in a hurry? Now, today, can you do it? Zhao Xian's tone was full of provocation. However, she is not afraid of provocation. It is nothing to face your challenge directly. The most terrifying thing is the knife from the back. Okay, I'll go to the company right away. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Su-Yun said after checking the time. The reason why she asked when was because she was afraid that it would coincide with the court session next week, but she didn't expect Zhao Xian to be in such a hurry. Since this is the case, let's fight quickly. No matter who it is, pick one, pick two, and pick a pair. In terms of strength, She will not back down. Zhao Xian sent her an address and asked her to go directly to the address without returning to the company. He didn't tell her where it was in detail, just that she would know when she went there. Looking at the address, I felt that the location was a bit off. After thinking about it, I directly sent the location to Si Yao. Si Yao was having a meeting in the conference room at the moment. The screen of his mobile phone lit up for a moment. He glanced at the name on it, raised his eyebrows, picked up the phone and clicked on it, and then quickly replied to her, "What's wrong? Do you know this address?" Suyun didn't know he was in a meeting and sent a voice message. Seeing that it was a voice message, Si Yao glanced at the people who were still waiting for him to continue the meeting. He tapped the pen on the table and looked at the vice president aside. "You continue first." Then he stood up and went straight out. Meeting room. Arriving at the office with an empty cubicle, I clicked to listen after entering. Her clear voice came from inside, and it sounded like she was outside. Si Yao clicked into the address interface she sent and slid on the screen. Soon the page was enlarged and he could see it more clearly and in detail. After thinking for a while, he thought of it, and he also replied, "This should be one of the company's experimental bases. Do you want to go here?" As expected of Si Yao. Before she said anything, he already guessed what she was going to do. It was indeed right to ask him, but why did Zhao Xian ask her to go to the company's experimental base at this time? Didn't she still not recognize her and not let her join the project department? Could it be that he changed his mind and let her participate now? "Okay, I understand, thank you," he thanked me cheerfully, and then reached out to take a taxi. Since the address is fine, it doesn't hurt to go and find out. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 40. Chapter 40, Suppressing Odor and Retaining Fragrance. As an experimental base, the location is generally far away from the city center. Firstly, it covers a large area. It is easier to find such a place in the suburbs, and the price is also very suitable. Secondly, doing experiments requires one to be undistracted. In addition, it is easy to grow in the upper suburbs and is rich in raw materials for spices. In the past, in Wulan, the laboratory was on the outskirts of the city, but after all, Luo Yuanhang's financial strength was insufficient, so he only rented half of a dilapidated factory. Every purchase of spices was enough to make him chatter about it for a while. Of course, he is very happy when the finished product is produced, and then he will talk about the future with her. Yes, imagine, just imagine. Although the place is a bit out of the way, luckily you can get there directly by taking a taxi. But unlike what I expected, what I saw when I got off the car was not a factory, but an entire building. The kind of building that rises from the ground looks quite regular in appearance, but it is quite unexpected to have such a building in this area. "Manager Zhao, I'm already here," calling Zhao Xian. She stood at the door of the building. She had already seen that the door was obviously locked, and there were security guards guarding it, as well as access control equipment. "It should be here, that's right. You wait for me for 5 minutes. Zhao Xian finished speaking briefly and quickly hung up the phone. Suyun was waiting at the door. The surrounding area is very empty, and there don't seem to be many people living there. I didn't expect that the new experimental base would be like this. But that's right, after all, with Huanya's wealth behind it, it won't be like the half-shabby factory she used to have, and those who didn't know would think that some parts were produced in it. 5 minutes later, Zhao Xian came out. Different from before, she was wearing a white coat, her hair was pulled up and she was wearing a hat. Her image was completely different. After swiping the access card, she said to Suyun with a cold face, "Come in with me. But remember, don't ask questions, don't talk too much, speak less, look less, listen more, do you understand?" Suyun nodded, Okay. She followed her into the elevator, and the elevator went up to the 7th floor, and then got off the elevator. Then, someone came forward and handed her a white coat, hat, shoe covers, etc. She was not unfamiliar with these, so she put them on very skillfully and did the work. Necessary cleaning. But I'm still a little confused. Is this asking her to directly participate in the experiment? But Zhao Xian said not to ask any more questions, so she didn't ask any questions and just followed her all the way. Because of the special nature of the perfumer's profession, the soap used cannot have any fragrance, so as not to affect the judgment of the flavor of the spices. Although it is not as comprehensive as a doctor's disinfection, basic cleaning work must be done. However, when she followed Zhao Xian into the laboratory, she found that it was not what she thought at all. To be precise, this should be not a laboratory. At least, not the kind of perfumery laboratory she usually works in. Not only does it not smell good in here, it also smells very bad. The whole room is filled with a weird odor. Nearly vomited. Suppressing the churning feeling in her stomach, she glanced at Zhao Xian, only to see that her expression was as usual, with no reaction at all, and she still looked at her with that cold look on her face. Manager Zhao, is this your second level? She roughly guessed it. Are you afraid? Zhao Xian asked. But this time, Su Yun did not find the mentality of waiting for a good show in her eyes, but instead felt a little more inspired. She smiled slightly and said, "Why are you afraid?" As a perfumer, it is impossible not to know that in the field of perfumery, in addition to making incense, there is also odor suppression. Not all spices are fragrant, some have a bad smell, and even taste disgusting. What the perfumer has to do is to use the different characteristics of spices to remove odor and retain fragrance. However, with such a strong odor, it seems that this place is a laboratory specializing in experimenting with various odors. It's also, I'm convinced. Seeing her calm expression, Zhao Xian was quite satisfied. Don't get too happy first. Do you think it's as simple as suppressing odor and retaining fragrance? That's a level that an entry-level perfumer should have. What I want you to do now is to record the detection data of different odors and analyze different characteristics. There are a total of 48 different odors here. You need to complete this task within 3 days. Can you do it? It won't take that long. Su Yun glanced at her lightly and said, 1 day, I only need 1 day. Surprise flashed in Zhao Xian's eyes, and her expression quickly returned to normal. Okay, you said it 1 day. Don't blame me for intentionally making things difficult for you then. It was Haikao that you boasted about. No matter whether it is successful or not, you have to admit it yourself. Of course, Su Yun couldn't wait to get into work. Looking at her expression of excitement and eagerness to try, Zhao Xian was inexplicably looking forward to the final result. To be honest, she was very repulsive to her from the beginning. The first sensory impression was not good, and it was difficult to listen to her later. Especially when Mr. Wang insisted on keeping her, she felt more and more that there was something wrong with her. Tricky. But the initial display of her abilities in the conference room last time had already made her change a little. At least, this Su Yun is a bit real and talented, but if she is really that capable, why hasn't she done so in the past few years? Have heard of her name. If she is really so capable, and all of Wulan's best-selling models are from her hand, why do she always use other people's names? She started to feel a little doubtful. Some of these 48 odors are very similar. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Pay attention to self-protection. Don't fail to complete the task and hurt your nose. Patting her shoulder, Zhao Xian said meaningfully. The words sounded harsh, but it could be heard that they were well-intentioned. Su Yun looked at her and smiled slightly. Don't worry, I promise to complete the task and pass your assessment. Zhao Xian also had a smile on his lips, but he immediately restrained it. Don't just talk too much. What we want here is results. Su Yonggong was about to get into work when Zhao Xian stood behind her and couldn't help but said, "Hey." He turned around and asked silently. After hesitating for a moment, Zhao Xian showed a very impatient look. "Is your lawsuit over yet? Why is it like a TV series that ends at 8 o'clock? With the most impatient tone, but still somewhat concerned, Su Yun smiled. "Thank you, Manager Zhao, for your concern. It will be over soon." Who cares about you? I'm afraid that your personal affairs will affect the company's reputation." "Yes, I understand, I will deal with it as soon as possible." Soon. End of this chapter.